should we start with SRV6 or you want to start with the same structure? Because just for a change, can we start with SRV6?
Yep.
Maybe if you can start, I think. Yeah, go. Okay.
I can present first. Let me know. I can present. Whenever say go. Thank you.
Should we get started? Okay, we can get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IETF 124 DMM working group. I'm Sri Gandavalli. I work for Cisco.
Satoru Matsushima from SoftBank.
Okay. So first thing, please be aware of the Notewell IETF Notewell policy. By participating in this IETF meeting, you agree to the IETF process and policies. These with regarding to anti-harassment, IPR, or other behavioral aspects. Please, there's a well-written of this documentation. Please review this. If you disagree, you have to leave the meeting. With that, we need a note taker. Any volunteer? Okay. John, can you support him? Okay. Thank you, TNG, John. Okay. So this is what this is the update on the working group. These are the working group documents in progress. First one is the mobility over transport network slicing for 5G. It's in last call. My co-chair, Satoru-san, is going to talk about it, give an update, followed by architecture discussion on SRv6 mobile user plane. And there's a MOP architecture document and the SRH reduction for SRv6. I don't believe there's a presentation for the SRH, right, Satoru-san, for the last one? For the last one, SRH in this meeting.
Yeah, USM got a flight cancel. So
Okay.
hopefully you got the meeting in time.
Okay, all right. Sorry to hear. Okay, first thing, yeah, maybe we'll start. So these are the working group documents. We'll first go through this. There's some presentations, and also prior to that, the chair update. After that, we are going to pick up there's some couple of new presentations. All right, I think we are going to review them. Maybe first thing, Satoru-san, you want to speak about mobility aware?
Yeah, thank you very much for your review for John's TNOA mobility draft. I think the working group last call went well. They also got some comment from few people, Linda, Tianji, others. So I think John replied for those comment and on his slot. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I think we're going to progress the document to IESG after AD review, chair and AD review. And so a quick update on the mobility traffic steering, because we have been talking about this for some meetings. Marco did the presentation last time and there was some positive feedback. And there were a couple reviews in I think John did the review. Overall, the plan is to, after this IETF week, we're going to issue an adoption call on the mobility traffic steering document. Okay, this agenda link for today's presentations, right? Maybe we'll start with architecture discussion on SRv6 for mobile user plane. Jacob? Yeah, no, sorry. Okay, Satoru-san, which one? The names are confusing. Which one is
Discussion.
discussion? Yeah, okay. Should work. Okay, is it work? No? You turn it on the back. No? Okay, I can switch. Yeah.
Hello, good morning. My name is Jakub Horn. I'm here to speak as a co-author of what we call the SRv6.
Stay close to
Sorry. For SRv6 map, our motivation draft. Next slide, please. So we will go quickly through the overview because I think everyone here knows what map and what the motivation is. Then we will discuss what are the updates and changes, and we will discuss the next steps. Please. So basically, we call this motivation draft because it describes the motivation and the benefits of the map using SRv6 mobile user plane. It is strictly related to RFC 9433 and the draft which describes the architecture. Please. So this is the overall overview of the architecture. We are essentially replacing the stateful session in a mobility by routing information distributed typically via BGP over the SRv6 functions, which really simplifies the management, simplifies the information, and basically converts the session information into the routing while preserving everything between PE and the cell site and user equipment totally transparent. Next, please. So there were a couple of updates. I am right now as a co-author instead of a couple of my colleagues from Cisco who moved to contribution part, and we change it that individual draft to informational reference because this is supposed to be just informational. Please. So we had a couple of discussions at IETF 22, whether to extend the content of the draft with the lawful intercept and some symbolic information, but that most of the comments lately were opposing this proposal because there would be many other potential things there. So we wanted to keep it really lean and straightforward going to this. So we don't want to address those points. If there is a need within the group, we can eventually discuss that within the other draft once this one is approved. Please. So next steps, one thing we wanna really update there. We wanna really increase add into the document the network slicing chapter to describe the edge computing and low latency slice using SRv6 microsip. This is really, we believe right now this is really important. We are already working on that. We will update quickly after this IETF. If you feel we should add anything else, please feel free to add it on the mailing list. And we would like to ask for the last call if there is nothing new, nothing really enhancing the document. We would like to ask for last call at the next IETF. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jacob. Any questions, comments? So yeah, go ahead, Tianji. Yeah. Can you? Sorry.
Okay. Um, for the next step part here, the first item, slicing, edge computing, URLLC, seems they are not in parallel. And since for slicing, it's going to be a big one to accommodate at least the URLLC, although the exact name that defined in 5G is different, but it does accommodate something similar to that one. So you may, when you update your draft, do check for that things.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thanks for the comment. Thank you.
Jeffrey Zhang. I think this document needs more work. So I'm glad to see that in this slide you mentioned that it describes the two areas. One is that's RFC, and then the other one is upcoming SRv6 map architecture, which basically turns the sessions into routing information. But the draft itself is actually not clear about that. The draft says describe the solutions, but it doesn't describe the solutions.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay, we didn't.
Right. And then another thing is that indeed turning the session information into routing information, that's a great idea. It's basically achieves distributed routing, and it's a lot of advantages. However, I don't see anything that is specific to SRv6. Whether for that RFC or for that map architecture, they're still ongoing. All those things applies to the MPLS as well. So basically, I'm not trying to argue the SRv6 versus MPLS here. I do agree that in general, there is some difference and advantage or disadvantage against each other or whatever. But when it comes to specifically about the mobility, I don't see any difference between the two. So that's the main point I want to mention here.
Well, okay, if I can answer, obviously it is applicable. MAP is applicable for basically any transport technology, but we wanted to really focus, and in the beginning that was full intent to focus on SRv6 because we really foresee that as a most advanced and the best fit technology, and also the first draft was there. So certain functionalities, certain possibilities are obviously only with SRv6, and I guess Satoru-san will explain that later during this presentation. But thanks for your feedback.
Right, but the thing is that this document title and the contents and the existence of document is basically confusing or misleading because it sounds like that these are the SRv specific advantages. I think we need to make that clear. Sure,
Okay.
the document can focus on SRv6, but it's not SRv6
Okay,
specific.
we can add the paragraph in that to address this.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I think great feedback. So you said there's confusion in the draft. How do we move forward? You suggest adding a paragraph as Jacob is suggesting, saying that it's not unique to this particular transport, but this is how we do it. Or how do you suggest? What do you think we should do? Your view.
I actually don't know how to proceed best, but one radical comment here, maybe that since we already have RFC there for the earlier work, and we have a working group document on the new routing-based solution, right? So those will be eventually become RFC and things like that. So one option is just we don't need this document at all. Just proceed with the unfinished work and plus the existing RFC. Basically, we're done. There is no need for this document. But that's just, as I mentioned, there's some kind of radical comment here.
Yeah,
But-
because that ship has sailed, right? I think, the working group, as we asked for adoption call, there was support. Unless we disagree with that process, right? I think given that, maybe we should park that. But I think only thing is what I want to be careful is if there's some new text that's getting added which was not in scope at the time of draft adoption, then absolutely we should take that out. We should review this. Otherwise, it's
Right. I understand that. I'm not saying that we must stop this work, but
Right.
we do need to make it clear that the things talked about in this document are not really SRv6 specific. We need to make that clear.
So any,
Not SRv6 specific, rather it's not unique to SRv6. What do you mean? Right. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah.
I think let's make sure
so
if you can.
I think that paragraph, or if you have any other proposal which comes to your mind later, we are totally open to anything. Right now, I have in mind to add a paragraph which will generalize the scope or mention the other possibilities. But if you have something different on your mind, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Any other questions, comments?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, you're in the line? Yeah, Q, please. Yeah. Jakub, you want to come back because there are some questions. Yeah, please. Sorry, I was not checking the.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. To Jeffrey's point, I just want to make like two things here. Like, I think the draft as is written doesn't say this is unique for SRv6. It says this is comparison to tunnel-based approaches. I think that's how the draft frames it. And I agree. Like, so that would cover like SRMPLS. I think it's already there. I'm totally fine adding a paragraph, but it's comparing to tunnel-based approaches, GDP, the first thing. And the second thing is the draft specifically, if I remember, and Sri and Satoru-san, correct me if I'm wrong, right? This was supposed to be the follow-up to 9433, which is SRv6 specific. So I hear the concern, but I think that like it is like SRv6 scoped. And I do, if there's any text that'll make Jeffrey comfortable with like, not claiming this specifically for SRv6, I do support that. But right now it is claiming it's in comparison to tunnel-based approaches.
No, let's refine the language. I think let's make it absolutely clear that the draft should not be claiming that this is only be done with SRv6. That's a fair comment, and we'll make sure.
I think so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a very clarification. Indeed, when I said SRv6 specific, a better word is SRv6 unique. Thank you for that. But so.
Thank you. Okay. Any other? I think there was one more, please. Yeah.
So I kind of share the opinion from Jeffrey here.
Please state your name, please,
Yeah,
for the records. Yeah.
Here,
Please state your name for the record.
oh, Longwei actually I signed up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, on the screen. And so because the mobile use plan has been well defined, so for me, I can only see SRv6 here is used to transport the mobile use plan from the cell side router to the core network here. So because you don't change anything for the mobile use plan, so that's already defined in 3GPP here. So you can use SRv6 or MPLS or just some other like routed networks, right? So why do you say it's an architecture for the mobile use plan here? For me, it's a transport technology, just in the same way as MPLS used to transport from the cell side router to the core network. So I think that I agree with Jeffrey here. We probably don't really need it here. We really don't need this document here because for me, there's nothing added or like to the already defined mobile use plan here, because all the interfaces has clearly defined it, right? So what's more, you still need the GDP protocol, right?
Sorry, don't know how to answer that. This is basically the same comment as before. I think
no, I just add some more reasons to his opinion.
Yeah. Understand that I still believe the SRv6 is and intention of this document was really to show the value and motivation for SRv6. And I totally agree. The map can run over any transport technology.
Yeah, but why for a particular set of applications we have a document, we have other application, and then using your same logic, we would have a new document, SRv6 for mobile use plan, SRv6 for video, SRv6 for any other applications, right? So if we do that, so it's we will never finish the work here.
Okay, we'll follow up on the, thank you for that feedback. I think we'll.
Yeah, actually, I won't support this one, this SRv6, because the time frame right now is very critical. Because for the 3GPP, they're discussing the next gen, the 6G part, and then for the UP architecture, there's some idea about what will be done to improve the user placing.
Yes.
Although for the working task discussion, you're not going to see SRv6 or Quick or whatever for the UP, but actually there are some ideas there to see whether this one SRv6 can be used to not replace, but people discuss, can that be a solution to replace the GTP for the next 6G? So given the critical point, so this one should proceed and to see at the parallel with the 6G there and this one for the SR6 map. And at one moment, well, for the last call of this one for working group, at that moment we'll get better clear of whether the 6G will need kind of things like that. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tianji.
Thanks for comment.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, Jacob, I think there's some feedback concerns overall in the mailing list. Authors have to make sure that I think it's all starting because the language is somewhat making it believe that it's unique to one specific.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next. Second. Can update on the map architecture, Satoru-san.
Good morning, everyone. This is Satoru. I'm presenting map architecture for DMM. This time I will make a very quick update for that. So please, next slide. So as I mentioned in previous meeting, I got some feedback during the adoption call relating to the MapC API. So originally we mentioned that the MapC API provides the API for the consumer, but we got comment. So it's a bit more precise to describe the MapC API to retrieve session information from mobile system. I think it'd be a good point, and I agree for that. So I will update with draft with some of candidate things. One is map architecture is independent from specific mobile service architecture, and the map architecture should be able to use any possible existing or new API. And another draft can describe a specific MapC API. So, I mean, this will be out of the scope of this document from the architecture side. So what I made in the latest draft is like this. So you can see the right-hand side. So the first para mentioned that the MapC retrieve or receive session information instead of the provide API. So at the last paragraph I added, so as the map architecture is independent from a specific mobile service system, the MapC may leverage any available interface or API on the mobile service system for the session information to be received. Each mobile service system specific interface API of MapC is out of scope of this document, and the other document may describe. So that's what I made in this revision. Okay, so please, next slide. Okay, so next step is I would like to ask working group last call. But before that, I need to update this draft to fill the security consideration section. So my plan in my mind on the security consideration section would be like this. The first one is the map routing control plane must avoid the spoofing tampering, and second one is the BGP is assumed protocol. So if that's the case, it should follow RC 9454, and the BGP session must be restricted to authorized peers, and especially in inter-AS, inter-domain cases. The third one is the map route import-export policy must ensure that map-specific routes are propagated only within intended routing instance. Next one is data plane things. Data plane using SRv6. It is not specific for SRv6, but the draft describes the architecture using the SRv6 data plane. So then we have to mention SRv6, and that SRv6 data plane must follow the security consideration in RFC 8754, 89, 96. So if any, so I will put the text in the section. So please let me know if you have any idea. I'm working on that. Okay.
Thank you, Satoru-san. Any questions, comments on the draft update? Okay. Oh, please, Jeffrey.
I just want to take this opportunity to clarify about Richard's comment earlier. So indeed, neither this one nor the earlier RFC for IPSR for mobile SRv6 for mobile user plane does not redefine a new architecture for mobile user plane on the 3GPP side. As far as 3GPP side, they have their own existing architecture. That is not changing. What this one is doing is that under the 3GPP architecture, how we can do it under the hood, implement it in a distributed fashion. That's how I understand it. So it's basically, we're not changing the 3GPP architecture. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Satoru-san. So I guess we are not going to issue LCs till the security consultations. Right?
Okay.
Thank you. Right. Okay, John, you want to give an update on? 1 second. Okay, our transport networks. Okay. Good. So this update includes, John, we want to be very clear, these are two separate documents, right? Yes. One is a working group document, another is a non-working group document. So structure your discussion. First, let's go with the first document, right? And then we'll deal with the second one separately. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sorry for that. I
had
put it together because they were related, but yes.
But one is a working group.
Yes.
Yeah. Please.
As Sri mentioned, the first one that you see on the left side, that is DMM TN-aware mobility. That draft is a working group draft that got split into two. One that carries over as the text of the body of the adopted draft, and the second draft is only contains the Yang model, and that is the standards-based draft. So if you look at this figure, you'll see the draft on the right, the TN-aware mobility, is split into the TN-aware mobility 22 and the UDP tunnel ACAS 01. So there are two drafts here. So the first one is the one that we're going to look at now. The one that was, I believe now completed last call, working group last call. If you go to the next slide, or can I?
Please.
Okay. So there were three sets of comments that we received on this draft. And I've got 3 pages with each of these drafts. I don't know if we should go into detail on each of those.
We have time. You can
Okay.
use it actually.
Yeah,
So-
then we can, let me just give an overview of each of those. So the first set of comments are 4 from Linda. It's talking about that this draft repeatedly says mobility aware. I wanted to say that this has been considered by this working group before. There were comments on the floor many meetings ago. And to resolve this, we added the text that following UE handover, the SNSSAI is mapped seamlessly to the corresponding GTPU source port and a number for the newly attached network and can be considered to be mobility aware. So that's the text we add to clarify where or the scope in terms of mobility awareness. But if this is a concern that is going to confuse going forward, I would say that we may want to suggest changing the name of the draft itself. That's something I'd like to have feedback so that, because this is coming from outside of people who attend this working group. So if there's confusion, I would suggest we should think about it. But the concepts in the draft and everything else is exactly the same. I can understand that comment is also related to the fourth one, where, I mean, I'm jumping now to the last one, which is talking about how these ranges and all affect when the UDP or when the UE roams. So in a sense, the UE is aware of mobility in the sense it is transparent to the mobility. All the mobility and roaming and all of those aspects are managed by by 3GPP. And the UE can obtain these services transparently. So mobility aware may be a little bit unclear if you are not aware of those. So that's something we need to address. So anyway, the fourth comment is that it's not an issue at all because the UE is transparent. I mean, it is transparent in terms of how the mobility is handled. On the first comment, I can start a discussion on the mailing list to say, do we need to change is that a reasonable?
Sure.
approach?
Okay. Thank you, John.
Okay. Then going to the second and third comments, yes, I think the commenter is talking about the dependency between these two drafts and one that is not a working group draft, but on which this draft depends because that's where the data structures for the Yang model is defined. So
Is that a
that's-
normative dependency, Yang model?
Yes.
The
I
other
mean-
one, no, I thought it should be the other way around, isn't it?
The other one is a normative draft, and this draft depends on that normative draft, which is not yet adopted by the working group.
Do you agree, Sato-san? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can consider again dependency. So I think the draft itself being informational. So I think it's not good idea to increase the normative documents.
No, absolutely. I think the author is only saying that this draft may be held up because the other one is not yet adopted.
Okay.
But that's something that the working group can manage. Okay. So then the third one it's about
But
the
I still have a question though. If there is a normative dependency on a document that's not adopted, we cannot move this forward, right?
yes,
is that-
that is the comment. Yes.
Is that,
Up to you also.
but why is that a normative dependency, John? And what is, I think that's the question. I'm not clear. Why Yang model is a normative dependency for the work completion of this document? It is not a normative dependency. Maybe Eric may have you here, but okay.
So let me explain the situation. We have a Yang model that is a standard strike draft, which is a normative document that is referenced in this document, in the TN-aware mobility draft. Yeah, this document itself, I mean, to be RFC is still, I mean, is informational, but it references a to be standards track Yang model.
it's
That's,
it's an individual track. It's not.
so if you just go back to the previous page, maybe it's easy to see here. So
Sorry.
I see. So then maybe. Right. So then I think maybe the solution is I have to check the draft, but if I'm referring to it as a normative draft,
It shouldn't be. That's what I was
then
thinking. yeah.
it should be put in as an informational draft. So that's the solution.
Exactly. Exactly.
Got
it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, that resolves at least one issue there.
Okay.
Uh,
And
yeah.
the third one is a good question also for this group. I mean, I'd like to have feedback. So in the reviews, so this, just to be clear, I mean, that section 6 is referring to the security section, security considerations. And I got feedback in reviews that we should not re-explain what has already been explained in RFC 9543 and so on. And that makes sense. But the comment here is that if we don't explain it, then that is too short and unclear. So I'm thinking of going with the approach of referencing it, but also bringing out the scenario where it matters. The scenario, I mean, so the author, I mean, the commenter is talking about a scenario where the between two providers, let's say, and there's an insecure network. So how would the UDP port and the IP address and all be securely handled? And I think this is a common scenario. It's been referenced. I mean, it's been provided in RFC 9543, but what I can do is add those details and then look to RFC 9443 for guidance on how to secure it. So that way we don't repeat what has been defined somewhere else unless we have something to change there. So that way there will be clear guidance. That's the thinking, but I'm open to feedback.
Okay.
And then, yeah, if any, otherwise we can go forward.
Okay, please. Yeah.
Okay, next page.
Next.
So here are a number of comments. I think here these comments are requesting for clarification, and each of these I think are pretty straightforward to fix. One of them was an error about the Gnode B CUCP versus the UP, and I think that's a mistake that should be fixed in the draft. The somewhere in the middle, or the third comment is also a little bit maybe good to explain. This slice is not only for the anchor node, it also applies to any node in between. So you can apply, I mean, these are depending on the segments. So any segment that is provisioned can be used in a consistent manner. So I would suggest keeping that as it is in the draft. But the others are clarifications, and the last points are something that should be fixed in the draft. I think we can do that.
Okay.
Pretty easy. Yeah. And then the last set of comments on the next page. Yeah, these are all comments that are requesting to clarify or change the wording to be more clear. They're good comments to help the reader understand better. And I think we can address these comments.
So you'll address them as part of LC last call.
Yes, I will. And how do I do that? I mean,
Yeah,
before
just-
I just post it in the
post
mailing
it,
list. And
yeah, before Sarasan takes over. Yeah.
okay, I will do that in the next couple of days. Do I also supply a revised draft or wait for them? Can do that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, can do.
Over the next few days, I can do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's the end of
That's
this.
the end of it. So what is the, should we continue with this?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So next is, you want to continue the ends? Yeah, okay. Okay, tell me, this previous one was first slide or?
Yeah, there are only 3 slides on this.
Okay, please, yeah.
So this is, to be clear, this is the non-working group draft, not adopted yet. But it was the split of the original draft, and this is the Yang model. So just to clarify, there is no change in the Yang model. It is simply split away from the other draft as shown in that figure in the beginning. The structure is exactly the same. So yeah, as I clarified, no change in the model. The Yang model was recompiled on the date shown here, September 18th. And the security considerations are also updated to reflect the latest updates in the NetMar 807 BIS draft. So there's a few minor changes in the draft. That's, I don't know, I mean, it's been reviewed and I think it's pretty stable, that part. If we go to the next page is where this is an appendix that we've added an example of how to use a configuration like this. Now, this is different from the configuration we talk about in the earlier draft. The earlier draft is simply talking about how it works in a 3GPP network. In here, we don't do anything about the 3GPP network. We're talking simply about how to apply the UDP port and configure the Yang model. And this example is using the baseline from the TEAS draft and just change, I mean, what is marked in blue over there, the UDP tunnel bearer. That tunnel bearer in the example in the TEAS draft is a VLAN bearer. layer 2 bearer. So what we've taken is the same structure and architecture as they have there, changed the VLAN to a UDP tunnel bearer, and then we derived the Yang model to, the example to construct that. So now this illustrates how we can use, or how a configuration with this Yang model would apply with a layer 3 bearer. So I think this adds value in that case. This has been reviewed by a Yang expert to ensure that the syntax and everything is correct, but we can look for more work. And I think that's all the changes that apply here. So really, from the normative side, I mean, everything should be in good shape. The security model follows all the recommendations that have been suggested. So I would suggest that if we get good comments, then we should try to adopt this draft.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, I think given that this was already in the previous draft, we can issue an adoption call after the, we'll first do Marcos and then followed by. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is was a question? Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Actually, it's for you,
Okay.
but you can stay. So you're asking, so Lionel Moore. So you're asking for working group adoption, but does it mean that you will automatically ask for working group last call and so on, saying that we have already worked on this document?
So just to set the context, thanks for the question. The Yang model was in the transport draft, but after lots of discussions, we've separated it out. But we're putting that for adoption call for whatever reasons, right? But generally, it was reviewed. Most likely, it should go through, but it's a separate document. Yeah. So after this IETF meeting, we're going to issue an adoption call. Once the draft is adopted, if there are no comments, we'll move it quickly towards a closure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just to make sure for people not being in the room that it's just a follow-up of something that we have already done, and it was just a kind of administrative issue with the young guys.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. It's going to be, everything has to be confirmed in the email in the group mailer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next we go with which one? Sorry, traffic steering or the traffic steering? Okay. Marco. Next is mobile traffic steering. Marco Levish. Good to see you.
You proceed.
Yeah, we can adjust your mic.
So mobile traffic steering. So this draft and work, we discussed a couple of IETFs so far.
Raise the mic, actually. Yeah. Okay, good.
Better?
Yeah.
It goes No?
Yeah.
Okay. So before this IETF, we published version 4, and this mainly covers more clarifying details and also addressing the comments that we received from John's review. Next slide, please. Pretty quickly again about the motivation. So standards for mobile communication systems are not end-to-end, full stop. So what we propose in this draft is to describe and standardize a way how mobile communication systems can stretch toward transport network and data network and have full control on the end-to-end path for steering. So there are a couple of reasons. We discussed that in the draft by means of use cases. And we had discussed this in DMM. We had a public site meeting at IETF 117. And the last revision, third revision, was very clear based on the comments that we received so far about the scope and the interworking options, use cases, deployment options. And in the appendix, we started to sketch an information model. And the last revision, as said, addresses the review's comments that we received and implements more clarifying details. Next slide, please. So this is the structure of the draft. Starting with the reference architecture was important for the following discussion of all the chapters. And we will discuss mainly use cases that are well known, but also new use cases that we expect from an evolution of the mobile communication systems. So mobile communication system, proactive user plane anchor relocation. It's a typical use case that also 3GPP considers, but also mobile communication system can be reactive in relocating a user plane anchor based on the data network or the transport network's decision. So these are use cases that we discuss here. Inter-UPA communication, so user-to-user communication. That's something which we tackle. And in particular, node ephemerality is something we discuss, which we see of high importance in future networks, where on the end-to-end path, some nodes may not be there all the time. So this may be due to mobility. So a user plane anchor or a data plane node may be mobile. They may fail, or they may enter a scheduled power saving mode. So these are things that we discussed in this draft. Then we propose a framework and how to deploy, and mainly discuss two options, one based on a dedicated controller and another one based on a decentralized deployment. And in section 6, we address different modes, how to deploy the controller and the decentralized approach, and also have operational text there to describe how the whole thing works end-to-end. And said in the appendix, currently we sketch an information model which needs to be extended according to the further discussion which we have. Next one. All right, quickly referring to the reference architecture. So we, as you can see on the left-hand side, we abstract from a detailed mobile communication system, but follow a common approach with a control data plane separated framework. This matches the IETF mobility management protocols. This matches 3GPP's 5G architecture. And we have clearly defined functions like a radio access network, a user plane anchor, and then a mobile communication system control plane. On the right-hand side, you see the data network with the application service function that's being used by the mobile user. It may have a complementing application control function. In between, there's a transport network with a set of data plane nodes. So that's our reference architecture. Below, we have been asked to sketch that we have no dependency on an association between user plane anchors, data plane nodes, and data networks. So any kind of combination is what we would like to support. Next one, please. Here, again, highlighting the scope that we would like to discuss. The use cases go much further, but this is what we would like to address in this draft by means of the information models. So it's the API between C1 and C2 X points, and this may apply between a mobile communication system control plane and mobile traffic steering controller in one case. In a decentralized approach, this interface may apply between a user plane anchor and a data plane node. So these two architectural differences is what we discuss in the draft. Next one, please. And here are a few snapshots from the comments that we received from John Kaipalimalil. So many thanks for your constructive comments. So the first one, most important for us is, so the feedback was positive in terms of value of the draft. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to do this work and spend effort on it. So the comment was that the draft identifies a gap or a problem in the current 5G system and the need to reselect and steer flows. Draft can be provide value and insight into complex areas. So that's what we in the first place want to do, and how far we can go here is something we would like to discuss with the working group. So the current scope we showed in the table of contents of the draft. So there was a comment about clearer differentiation on traffic treatments, and we were a little bit loose in using these terms, traffic treatment policies. So mainly in a functional way, we would like to discuss and focus first on the mobile traffic steering related traffic treatment, so path steering. We also talk about advanced traffic treatment in the introduction section, so far only. So we added text and clarified that in the introduction, that advanced traffic treatment means non-functional kind of traffic treatment policies, for example, metering or QoS. So the first place we would like to address the path steering. Then as said in section 5, we put a lot of text and description in the two deployment options based on a dedicated controller or a distributed control plane. So we were a little bit loose in following up on these details in the introduction. So John's comment was that this should be stated much earlier and described later for easier reading. That's what we did. So we covered that in the abstract and the introduction to make to the reader very clear that from the functional architecture, we will have details on these two operation details. And then in section 5, we added a lot of more text in describing these different frameworks and which pros and cons each of the framework and deployment options has. So this is hopefully now tackled and described much better. Next one. Then, okay, so the remaining comments were mainly about use cases. So this was very valid comment here in section 4.2, which is where we describe a use case where the mobile communication system proactively relocates a user plane anchor. So this was a little bit confusing because we say it's proactive, but it may be understood like, okay, if the mobile communication system relocates user plane anchor based on user equipment mobility, it may be reactive. This is true, but we describe the draft and the use cases from the viewpoint of the transport network, right? So if we look from the transport network towards the mobile communication system relocates the user plane anchor for whatever reason, and the transport network need to follow. So this is proactive by the mobile communication system. Mobile traffic steering domain needs to follow that reactively. Section 4.3 is the opposite case. Here we say mobile communication system reactive UPA relocation. So whenever the transport network changes the path for whatever reason, VPN may fail. Data network may be relocated. There are these follow me edge computing kind of use cases being discussed in many places. So that may be a motivation to tell the mobile communication system to also follow that change in the transport network and data network by means of relocating user plane anchor. So this is mobile communication system reactive. We added a bit more text. We hope this is now clear. If there are more comments on that, we are happy to improve it. So that's the main comments where we added quite some clarifying text to the version 4. There are more comments which we clarified on the mailing list. So far, we didn't see a real need to change the text in the draft. If there is a need, we are happy to do that. But we clarified that on the mailing list. Mainly, it was related to the use cases or the larger framework of a use case. So does user mobility trigger steering, or does measurement on the path trigger steering, or both? Yes, from the use cases, we hope we get clear now that both is being considered. Where the trigger comes from, that's use case specific. And as we said, the main specification part covers that API that we described between C1 and C2 as shown before. All other events, where they come from, where is information coming from, also later on, when an IP address of a user equipment gets obsolete. So this is use case specific, and we just follow that kind of approach and don't specify the whole framework, but apply the API that we specify here in the view of these use cases. So we don't specify all the framework kind of operations. I hope that makes sense. Next slide, please. A few more in the view of the use cases. So does mobile communication system proactively relocate user plane anchor based on same measurement? So what is it here again? What is the trigger of a user plane anchor relocation? We want to support that in the view of traffic steering and make use of the API that we specify, but don't specify the whole framework. And because we abstract the mobile communication system and also the data network, so that may be part of a whole deployment and solution. Same for the rest. So whenever you think there is more to be described and clarified in the use cases section, we are happy to discuss and do that. Next slide, please. All right, two open things here. Also a comment from John was the draft has many terms like flexible deployment, dynamic reconfigurability, complexity, which can be understood in different ways. This is true. Same as before, we did not try to clarify that further, but if needed, because it may be understood in a confusing way, we are happy to have more descriptions, what we understand with deployment flexibility or reconfigurability. So this is something we can discuss in the press note. Yep.
John? Yeah.
So comment just about that flexibility part. We're looking at this kind of text in the 6G discussions in SA2, and there are very different understandings of what flexible means. One set of folks, I mean, depending on what it looks like, they think it's about moving these segments and things as you've described in the draft. There are others who look at a UPF that can be decomposed and think that moving around to get higher availability, that's the flexibility you need. So very different things. And depending on the perspective of the reader, we might end up with completely different things unless that's sort of clarified. So I'd suggest that that would be good to clarify.
I think my view on this as a chair, I think overall these are all terms which we need to qualify. Without qualification, I think we should not use this because it's a technical specification, right? I think flexible in one context may be different from a different context.
That was the intention. I mean,
I think we should eliminate such terminology.
Okay.
But I did have some other comments which I can bring later. Or
okay, please.
If you're not.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think we have time.
Okay. So I mean, thanks for taking all of my comments into consideration. I think this is a real problem for 6G also, and the context in which it applies, I think, is that right now, if you have to get QoS from end to end, the way that it's being handled is to locate a UPF next to the application server. This introduces a whole lot of issues when there's mobility because you have to move multiple terminals. And following the mechanisms that you're suggesting here, it gives the ability to introduce quality of service on a segment that is not a tunnel, that is the N6, N6 terminology. And in that sense, it does add real value. That was the main thing. So I think we should, I'm reiterating what I said earlier, that we should develop this and find ways to, have a solution that can be applicable.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that additional comment. Yeah. So we wanted to start easy and on the functional requirements first, which was steering. QoS was on the table from day one, but we did not add something for QoS in the information model because we thought start easy, but it's complicated enough to tackle the function requirements. So if QoS is something which we should add in more detail, let's discuss and do that. I'm happy to
sure, and I don't know, you can decide whether it should be in the same draft or another draft, because as it is, it's quite complex, and that's up to the authors, I guess, or the group.
No, I think from scope point of view, if I may comment, I think just as an individual contributor, right? Overall, this is about steering. I think if you bring QoS, it muddles the waters. I think completely it brings a different set of issues. In my opinion, my recommendation would be, at this point, it's not adopted yet, but to keep it limited to steering.
First, and then see if we are.
Separate,
Yes,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, I think separate.
We can discuss that.
I think I agree with that. I mean, it makes sense to have it separate. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So also John addressed the point that we discussed many times in the past. And so there was a little bit of a bias, and the first draft that we published, we intentionally kept it related and applicable, but not interfering with 3GPP. So we did not want to have a dependency on 3GPP. We abstracted the mobile communication system and so on, as we explained. But some comments said, so why you talk about UPA, mobile control plane, just use the terms from 3GPP. And we saw a little bit of a problem with that and got support in not doing that, but keeping it rather aligned with 3GPP architecture and applicable. So since this came up during the last review again, so we would like to get your opinion how to treat it. So we would really prefer to keep it aligned and applicable, but not use too much of the terms and specifics of 3GPP, as long as it's applicable. That's our view.
My view on that, I think in general, if you can abstract it, if you can generalize it, we can do such work here. We don't want to come out as something we are modifying the 3GPP interfaces or specifications. I think as long as with that, if we keep that in mind, I think we should.
And in terms of the reference points that we specify and focus here, which is the C1, C2, we don't know how C1 in a future mobile communication system looks like, which function terminates this in a 5G plus or 6G kind of architecture. So I think this is well defined in the draft and is applicable to any kind of evolution of mobile communication systems in our view. Yona?
Yeah, thank you. I think that the key question would be what will be the real added value of this specification defined in DMM? Because we need to ensure that either it is something targeting existing deployments or new deployments or new the current work on 6G. So something not defined yet. Because if it is on existing deployment, it means that there is no impact at all on the 3GPP specification. On the other part, you may be already.
Time is over.
Calling.
Evacuation.
But it comes from the
No, it's from the speaker. Here.
It's emerging.
It's not very conventional. We don't know exactly.
Lionel, your comment.
Un signal d'alerte nous a été transmis. Nous en cherchons actuellement la cause.
Good.
Veuillez attendre pour les instructions qui suivront.
In French.
Attention, attention. Another signal has been received. We are now investigating the cause. Please stand by for further instructions.
Sorry for that.
So no objections against the draft. That's good.
But
Okay. Shall we complete this despite of the noise? Or?
If you can communicate.
so let's try.
Let's try that.
Let's try.
Attention, attention. Un signal d'alerte nous a été transmis. Nous en cherchons actuellement la cause. Veuillez attendre pour les instructions qui suivront. Attention, attention. Another signal has been received. We are now investigating the cause. Please stand by for further instructions.
We'll do so.
So we don't even know if we have to worry or.
But I think I get your point. So
Yeah.
I think it's so for current deployments, I think it's difficult, right? Because it's well specified and the C1, C2 interface, it's not clear how it can apply to today's architecture. Is it the NEF or the PCF or whoever supports this, right? So we address rather evolutions of the current architecture and see this being considered then by 3GPP in the future. That would be the ideal case.
Attention, attention. Another signal has been received. We are now investigating the cause. Please stand by for further instructions.
Actually, the point is correctly on the termination point of the C1, C2. If you have impact on AMF and SMF and so on, it means that you will have to move everything. And in the new architecture, you may imply some simplification or flexibility, introduce some flexibility in this area. So I think it, from a document point of view, and I think from a working group point of view, if it is something to be adopted by the working group, it's to clearly see what will be the real scope of this proposal. And I know that when we are talking about 5G, because we had a lot of discussion regarding 5G, we are reluctant to see any impact on the existing architecture or the existing protocols and so on. If there is something that we can do in a smarter way in the next generation, there is the door is open to discuss that. But if we are too late on this, it will be like in the past that we had for SRv6, for instance. It will be too late to influence or whatever the work done in 6G. So it's why we just to figure out if it is something that we would like to do for the next generation where we have some freedom, or for the existing one. In that case, we know that there is no impact at all on the 5G.
I'd rather see it for the next generation because here the 3GPP is still flexible, right? So if the draft is attractive to 3GPP, they may take it into account, right? And specify on their side which is the termination point or which is the function terminating C1. So
Okay.
That's how we see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lionel, thank you. Great feedback. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Yeah. Mark.
Just one clarification. So you mentioned about end-to-end. So when it comes to end-to-end, what do you mean by end? Where is your end exist?
One end is the user equipment. The other end is the data network with the service instance that the user, that's serving the user's application. And in between, there is the data network, PE routers, transport network routers, UPA, radio network.
Marco, could you speak closer to the mic? With this noise, it's very hard to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so end-to-end was the question, and the answer was one end is the user equipment, the mobile user, for example, that makes use of a service whose service instance is in the data network. And in between, there is the rest of the data network, maybe a PBE router, a data plane network, a network of data plane nodes, which is the transport network, the UPA, the radio access network. So we want to align with the UPA and radio access network and apply these rules and align it with the mobile system to the rest of the path, which is N6 in 3GPP.
We are now investigating the cause.
Can I Marco, do you mean that the end-to-end is the end-to-end of a user flow,
Yes.
for example? That's what it is, right? Not the segments of the transport and so on. It's if you have a TCP flow.
In the end, there will be segments, but that depends on the deployment, right? But end-to-end is user to service instance.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Shall we move to the last slide and quickly say it's 3 bullets? So we plan to extend operations sections according to feedback received and add clarifications. Then implement, according to your feedback, additional kind of descriptions like QoS or not. And then in particular, unify the format of the information model, which is currently in the appendix. And then if there is interest from the community, call for an adoption as working group document. One more comment. I think thanks again to John for the big effort in the review and comments. Yesterday, we received also comments and a review from Carlos Bernados, who was one of the other volunteers, but he just made notes in the draft and sent it to me. So I will ask him to share it on the
Please.
DMM mailing list. and
That's
discuss
important,
it.
yeah.
But in general, he concluded that this is useful work and he supports it.
Okay.
That's it.
Any questions, comments? Mark, I have one question on the triggers, right? I think, was it slide 8 or? So you said you don't document the triggers for the mobility. Is that?
We describe use cases and
Uh-huh.
focus on the steering part. But where triggers come from, which is the semantic that comes with a trigger, I think that goes too far here, because that's, I think, can be implementation specific. Right?
Can the trigger come from the UE itself, or can the trigger
Also.
has to?
Also about the lifetime of a UE's IP address. Right? You may apply a policy that asks for IP address continuity if the anchor point changes, but the anchor point may provide a new IP address in addition. But after the service associated with the continued IP address terminates, the IP address may be obsolete, right? But how to control that? I don't think that's the role of the draft here.
Okay. Thank
If
you.
you think we should add more documentation on that, but I think there are various ways to implement this. Right?
Okay, I think thank you for the reviews. I think Lionel also gave some good feedback overall how to position it. I think we'll maybe after this IETF meeting we'll ask for the groups adoption. We'll issue an adoption call, but prior to that maybe Carlos is not in the meeting. If he can post his comments, that would be great.
Yes, I'll talk to him.
Our investigation reveals that no emergency situation exists. Thank you for your cooperation. It is now possible to return to your working area.
Great, excellent.
Attention, attention. Nos recherches indiquent qu'il n'y a pas de situation d'urgence. Merci de votre collaboration. Vous pouvez maintenant retourner à vos postes de travail. Attention, attention. Our investigation reveals that no emergency situation exists. Thank you for your cooperation. It is now possible to return to your working area.
Let's do that.
Attention, attention.
Come on.
Nos recherches indiquent qu'il n'y a pas de situation d'urgence. Merci de votre collaboration. Vous pouvez maintenant retourner à vos postes de travail. Attention, attention. Our investigation reveals that no emergency situation exists. Thank you for your cooperation. It is now possible to return to your working area. Attention, attention.
I think you can.
Nos recherches indiquent qu'il n'y a pas de situation d'urgence. Merci de votre collaboration. Vous pouvez maintenant retourner à vos postes de travail.
Mark,
Attention, attention.
you can do that.
Our investigation reveals that no emergency situation exists. Thank you for your cooperation. It is now.
Okay, one second. Yeah. Oh, okay. Sure. Okay. Okay. John, can you take the comments? Okay, Mark.
So thanks, Sri. Yeah, my name is Mark Grayson from Cisco. Want to introduce, I guess, a new topic to DMM.
There's a recording.
I've got to stand here. Okay. Yes. Obviously, many of the drafts have been talking about intra-access mobility with the SRv6 mobile user plane and the earlier proxy mobile IPv6 work. So dealing with mobility at the network level. We think there is a potential problem about the inter-access mobility, about how do we scale and how do we roam between networks moving forward. And what we did, we've written a problem statement, and we would welcome feedback from DMM whether this is within scope of DMM charter and how we should be looking to move forward. So that's the background. Next slide, please. So the background is we see an increasing adoption of small, localized, distributed, private wireless network deployments. Today, I'd say that is the majority of Wi-Fi networks. You would describe Wi-Fi networks like that. If you look at Statista, they say there are maybe 500 million Wi-Fi networks described like that. But moving forward, we are seeing an increasing adoption of using cellular technologies to address the same. I think one estimate from Vodafone that says that by the end of the decade, they're estimating in Europe alone, there'll be 1 million private cellular networks. So we foresee an increasing adoption of these small networks. And indeed, I guess we're all familiar from a Wi-Fi perspective that these are often indoors, and that's where we consume most of our traffic. And therefore, candidly, the majority of all smartphone data goes on these small networks, not specifically on the outdoor macro. So some of the use cases we see are being able to roam onto those networks. And so roam, I guess, is an overused term. If you're from Wi-Fi industry, roaming is the inter-AP mobility, which is sort of intra-access. Here we're talking about roaming in the classical cellular case, 3GPP case, when we're using a credential issued by one particular entity to then authenticate access on an independent private wireless network. What we see is the formation of wireless federations of access and identity providers. That could be Wi-Fi access providers, but I think in the States there's sort of the CBRS type federation of networks which are using a particular construct to facilitate roaming onto those networks. And we see regulators in different jurisdictions actually making spectrum available for localized 4G and 5G deployments. And so whichever geography you're in, you can typically apply for license and deploy your own private network. So things have significantly changed even from a number of years ago. There's work going on in 3GPP. So in 3GPP release 19, SA1 introduced a new concept called an SNPN cellular hotspot. So that's defined in 22.261, and just taking verbatim from 3GPP, it described as connectivity hotspot based on 5G network technology that provides services in a similar way as provided by Wi-Fi hotspots. Charging requirements are considered out of scope of this functionality. So you can see 3GPP looking to hopefully mimic the success of Wi-Fi in being able to support some of these use cases. And one scenario in terms of the scaling challenge, and we can take some data here from Wireless Broadband Alliance, but they look at a future where we have 1,000 times more networks, where each of those networks supports 1,000th of the signaling that you typically see today on a public cellular network. So we're looking at a different type of scaling into the future if we are to see this mass adoption of these small localized networks. So that's the background, the scenario that we're trying to look at. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of roaming and mobility signaling, we recognize that there are different flavors according to your wireless technology of choice. So if you're roaming with Wi-Fi, it's likely you'll be using radius. If you're roaming with 4G, you're likely to be using diameter S6A. If you're roaming with 5G, you're likely to adopt the N32 interface based on HTTP2. So a number of different transports defined for the different technologies. And when we look at roaming signaling, we've got some unique characteristics of all of those systems that they require support for typically access initiated signaling, which is, I guess, obvious that we need to authenticate the user as he presents himself in the access network. That's triggered by him entering an access network. It's triggered by the access network. But we also have the requirement to support server-initiated signaling back from the identity provider. So that could be, for example, if you've run out of credit and you need to then push back that information back to the access network, or in 3GPP, it could be that the user has moved to a separate access network, a second access network, and you signal the first access network that the user has moved onto that second access network. So how do the public cellular networks solve that? Well, GSMA, the trade body of the mobile operators, solves that with a centralized database that they call IR21. And within IR21, you register the IP addresses of your signaling endpoints, and the 900 operators which are part of that exchange IP addresses and use that to configure their border gateways. So the 900 by 900 sort of scales for GSMA. And that's how they support both access-initiated signaling as well as the server-initiated signaling from the IDP. And then on the public cellular system, they define a use of a private internet network, IP network, IPX, to connect these networks together. That is fine for the 900 public cellular operators, but there is no equivalent organization, and I guess we don't anticipate an equivalent organization for the millions of private networks. So how are we seeing federation type deployments being used to scale adoption of private wireless networks, and they use dynamic discovery of roaming signaling endpoints, which are then accessible over the public internet. So we're seeing a different approach from the small and distributed compared with the big and public. And some work in 3GPP SA3, so obviously the work was agreed in SA1. It goes into SA3 about, well, how do we solve this from a security perspective? Okay, so that's some background just on roaming and mobility signaling. So next slide. So the challenge that we face when we're looking at these small distributed models is that we need to cross the enterprise perimeter. And so a typical enterprise firewall will be configured to permit outbound sockets from known endpoints. So I know my radius NAS is going to originate radius packets, and therefore I allow that to transition across my enterprise firewall. But if we're talking about the public internet, those enterprise firewalls will be typically blocking anything that's originating from the public internet from an unknown endpoint. And so the ability, we can support the access-initiated flows, but the challenge we have is how do we support those server-initiated flows as well. And so this is a problem for all technologies, and just calling out some work that's going on in RADEX working group. So RADEX working group has a draft called Reverse COA. And so these are just some quotes of Reverse COA, which highlight this fundamental problem that we face even in the world of radius, that says it is generally impossible for a server to send a COA packet. This is a reverse direction to the NAS that is located behind a firewall or a NAT. A TLS connection is normally used to forward request packets from the client to the server and to send responses from the server to the client. The specification of Reverse COA allows us to send the server-initiated packet down that same TLS tunnel. So we're seeing RADEX looking to solve this from a radius perspective, but we're highlighting that this is a generic industry challenge. And then obviously, because we can send the reverse signaling down the same outbound socket, we solve the firewall traversal issue. And we don't need to have any centralized database to configure those firewalls. Next slide, please. So the problem statement that we have is that we know that RADEX is already progressing work that will facilitate roaming, adoption by small, localized, distributed, private Wi-Fi networks, or whichever wireless technology uses radius. 3GPP is discussing the architectural enhancements to support SNPN cellular hotspots. And some of those proposals are to study the enhancements of the N32 roaming interface to permit server-initiated signaling towards the access network to reuse the same outbound sockets, so reusing the same approach that's been adopted by RADEX to then minimize firewall and border gateway configuration. Looking at LTE, and just a comment that I think the stats say that the majority of private cellular networks are going to be LTE until the end of the decade. So for the next 5 years, the majority of private networks are going to be LTE based. I don't think there's an appetite within 3GPP to address LTE existing issues, but there's clearly no standardized approach in diameter that allows a server-initiated message to get towards an access network behind a NAT or a firewall. And so we've written the problem statement. Now the question is to this group, to DMM, is the scaling of roaming and mobility signaling for adoption by small, localized, distributed private wireless networks in scope of the DMM charter? And if in scope, or if a scope is agreed to be amended, we could imagine example outputs of this work could include recommendations on adaptations or interworking or some types of solutions, which then would allow N32 S6A transports to facilitate perimeter firewall traversals. So new topic, talking about inter-access mobility. I open the floor and welcome comments and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions? John?
Hi, just a minor question, really. The draft mentions roaming and mobility. And I was just wondering if, mobility is, both terms are confusing, as you mentioned at the very beginning. But on the mobility side, is it looking at anything like make before break or break before make and things like that? Or is it more about the identity and setting up a connection in different networks?
Right, John. So yeah, I did mobility because at least just from a cellular perspective, I guess it's inherent in mobility. A mobility event will trigger the server-initiated signaling back towards the anchor network. So that's why mobility is there. So I hadn't considered aspects of make before break in this.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Eric?
Is Radix looking at a mechanism for messages to be server-initiated messages to be sent the other way? Are they looking at a quick transport?
No. So reverse COA is their solution. So that's using RadSec. So with an outbound TLS tunnel, so within the outbound TLS, which is established as part of RadSec, they will send the reverse COA down the TLS tunnel.
Yeah, I think this draft already came to telechat.
Yeah. So that's how. So there's some discussion, early discussion of quick in Radix, but I think that's quite immature compared with where we are in reverse COA.
And then the second question was, I can't recall if the reverse COA draft, but what are the security requirements and the trust requirements for getting information about IP addresses passed around to intermediate boxes?
Well, so reverse COA
to open firewalls
doesn't necessarily, because it's an outbound socket, then we don't have to transfer the IP addresses.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I think, Mark, one question I have is the three protocols or approaches in place, right? One is radius, diameter, and SBC HTTP2, right? So from the solution point of view, do you see that each of these protocols are to be extended, or what do you think is the ideal way to deal with this problem?
Yeah, well, okay, we may be jumping ahead in terms of is there an appetite to look at this? So in one scenario, I guess we could look at a common framework that could support diameter. Maybe conceivably that there is a framework where we can support diameter and N32, which facilitates traversal. But yeah, I guess we're prejudging what the recommendations and candidate solutions would look like.
Okay. On your overall scope statement, this is my view. Satoru-san may have a different view, but overall, in general, I think documenting this problem may be extremely useful to the community, in my opinion, right? Overall, it's touching multiple aspects. There's no single entity which thinks, given that it's not in the scope of a single entity, it's spanning multiple entities. Maybe IETF doing some work and making some recommendations to 3GPP may be useful. I think of maybe IPv6 support, like when 3GPP IETF made a recommendation to 3GPP to support per UE prefixes, right? 3314 or whatever RFC, right? That was a good, it is a recommendation. In that context, maybe something documenting this problem statement, hinting at solutions may be useful, but well, it's up to the working group and Satora-san.
I don't have a specific comment, but there's a queue. Linwei.
Okay.
That's me. So it all depends on how many identity providers are required here. Like in cellular and in Wi-Fi, that's totally different. In cellular, so you have only one identity provider that's included or programmed in your SIM card. So somehow, but in Wi-Fi, that's so different. For example, at the airport, the local wireless network, they provide your identity. I mean, the IP addresses. They really don't require your true identity. They temporarily ask you for a cell phone or email address, and then they just let you in here. So when you say roaming here, so you have an underlying assumption there. So somehow, the provider or network provider, and so only accept a certain set of identity, providers in there. So you have to make clear. So all this like a problem here are rooted to the owner identity provider. For me, it's so if that one I didn't hear you make clear there, but I see it's implied there.
You're right in terms of the scale. So clearly, I guess there's no argument around the scale of the access network. So there's going to be many access networks of different flavors. The question you're right to raise is what about the scale of identity providers? But I think things are changing in terms of cellular, in terms of provisioning multiple identities and eSIMs on particular devices, where some of the aspects and characteristics where we've conventionally associated those with Wi-Fi, that you have multiple credential providers or multiple identity providers for Wi-Fi, and I need to make a selection which one to use in a particular scenario. Some of those characteristics are appearing in cellular, where now I have my NPN provider provisions an eSIM, and I have multiple different eSIMs, and I need to then maybe have multiple active eSIMs, and therefore which one do I use in certain situations. So I think it's a good point to call out the scale on the identity provider perspective, but I think there are developments going on which bring in similar characteristics to cellular that we've seen on Wi-Fi.
Okay, so I got it. So another comment is about something you talked about in the beginning. You mentioned that right now we have more and more access points there. So it's still different between wireless like network and cellular. On cellular, we have many microcells, but that's only the physical. So the signal, I get this signal. They do not check the content. So content will be still another like like radio station, base station, to be somehow. So only when you are concerned about the content, so you need this kind of roaming, because you need to do some charging, user management issue there. But in the cellular there, we have one base station, one GNB there. We could have multiple antennas. Antennas only accept the physical thing. And then in the wireless world, that's another thing. We have the AP, we have AC, right? So you could have many Wi-Fi, antennas, small one, for example, in one building, but you have only one AC there, but that's not roaming. So even though, it seems like roaming, you can move from like a floor 1, go to the floor 2, but that's not roaming, because all the data go to the same AC there. AC manages the traffic, the content. So you have to separate the physical signal and user data, digital data, that kind of thing there.
Yeah, I'd agree that we're talking about different administrative domains. So yes, when you're in a single administrative domain, like clearly isn't roaming as we've described it here, and is solved with intra-access mobility, the focus that we've seen so far from DMM. Yes, I'd agree that we focus on the inter-administrative domain scenarios.
Thank you, Lionel. John, are you in the queue? No.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. On Radex, so I know that there is some ongoing discussion on that, and I think it's fine. For the two others, I think that from the SNPN point of view, so 3GPP, I think it will first depend on the outcome of the discussion to see if there is any action to have here, because it could be a 3GPP specific solution to be able to do that. Because when you are considering SSPN, there is an assumption that what you are developing is according to the 3GPP specification. It's not a basic private networks. For Diameter, I would be happy to do anything on that, but I think it will not happen because so far the key issue that we have is that only radius is used usually in private networks. So if you have a Radex based solution, it will solve most of the issues that have been raised here. And I can even say that it's not related to SNPN, but you can even interwork with cellular network using radius, because this is something that is already supported. So at least from the roaming point of view, when you are moving from one access network to another access network, you may have a radius-based solution also supported by the mobile operators.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, so you're right. You can go, I guess, with a AAA to a credential holder, and I guess that's something else that perhaps, I mean, maybe that's good feedback, that's something that IETF should look at, because I don't think that's going to be within scope of 3GPP to go any further on the credential holder interface, but maybe that's something that we take as feedback as to how we look to solve this in different ways.
I think that if there is a good output of this from IETF to 3GPP, would be to say that if there is any solution defined in Radex, to make a 3GPP aware of that, to update their specification describing the interworking with.
Right. So to see how then Radex and reverse COA can then be applied to SNPN roaming to cover the 5G case, and then we leave the LTE.
Just for clarification, from my point of view, SNPN is just one specific way to develop private networks. Right. How to interconnect with private network, you can just rely on radius as it is today, and it is also available in 4G and in 5G. And actually, it was the main solution developed so far, because Radex, for instance, in 4G was not adopted by private networks. So the only way to interwork and to support roaming is to have radius. So at least if there is anything done in Radex, it's something that could be adopted by 3GPP just to enhance their scope of interworking.
Right. And I should just call out, there is another individual draft expired about 5G and radius, and so perhaps that's good feedback to focus our efforts on that. Thank you.
So Lionel, if I may ask, right, do you think, is it worth putting some efforts documenting this problem overall, whatever is in the draft? What's your view on that?
At least there would be some work to be done, at least based on what I've seen so far, depending on the output of the discussion first in 3GPP, because actually if they are developing a solution based on CEP and the use of N32, it could be totally out of scope of what it's done so far.
No, not the solution.
Okay.
Clearly documenting the problem. Here is the problem, this is the environment, this is a scale issue, whatever, right? Just documenting the problem.
But if you're documenting the issue, it will be documented anywhere in the 3GPP specification, in the 3GPP TR report. Because you need to investigate the issues to be able to provide the solution. So this will be documented there. After that, if there is anything that needs to be done, it could come from the output of this study in 3GPP.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. My personal view on that, and based on what I've heard so far and reading the draft one day ago. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, any other questions, comments? I think we'll let the working group provide some feedback based on.
No, thank you. Great feedback.
Thank you so much. Any other topics? Okay, if there are no other topics or questions, or we close this meeting here. Thank you everyone for attending. See you all in IETF 125, hopefully. Thank you. Where is that? In China?
Okay.
Right. Is that here? Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, as always.
Very nice.
Good chair.
True chair.
True chair. I'm the chair. You're the chairman.
Yeah, chair.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Very good start for the meeting.
Except for the alarm.
Yeah. That's not very unusual.
You'll be here till Friday?
No, I have to. I have to participate in the wedding. My wedding.
Oh.
I have to leave at early morning on Wednesday.
Oh, is it? Oh, where is the wedding?
Osaka.
Osaka. Oh, nice.
It's nice, but a bit far from here. I have to
Very nice. Very nice.
When you leave?
Friday.
Friday, okay.
Friday.
California.
Yeah.
Sunny. Hot.
Yeah. Sunny California.
Sunny
That is true. Thank you again, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much. True cheers. Sorry?